Hello and welcome to part 3 of using Microsoft Office Equation Editor. In this part, we'll talk about Equation Editor and tables. So you start off by specifying the starting number of rows and columns. You do this by clicking the Insert tab and then clicking on the Table button. As you see, there's a pop-up box that appears and you can actually select, using your mouse, the number of rows and columns you want. Another way of doing that is to click on the Insert Table button and you'll be asked to define how many rows you want and how many columns you want. And this is what's inserted, a table of 3 rows and 3 columns. It's a little wide and we'll show you how to adjust that later on. Now, you can tab at the end of the table to create a new row. For example, if you're on the cell at the very bottom right, you can hit the tab button and you'll be given a brand new row, the 4th row, and you'll see it's broken up into 3 columns. And you have complete control over table borders, and we'll show that in just a moment. Now, take note of the table's control crosshair. If you move your mouse over the table, you'll see this little tiny plus sign appear, and that gives you several different options. Right-clicking on the control crosshair will bring up the table menu, as you see on the right part of your screen, and we'll go through some of these options in just a moment. Now, to remove all the borders in your table, all those black lines, horizontal and vertical black lines, you right-click on the control crosshair, as you see the pop-up box appears, and then you select on Borders and Shading. And then the Borders and Shading dialog box appears on the right-hand side of your screen. And you would click on None, and then click OK. And then all of the horizontal and vertical borders will disappear. Now, let's talk about equations and tables. Equations can be placed within the cells of a table. And the way you do that is within each cell, you click the Alt equal sign. For example, here's a particular table, at least a part of it, and then I've basically clicked on that one cell and I've clicked Alt equal sign, and then as you can see, an equation editor object has appeared and you're all ready to type in your equation. If necessary, you can justify the equation. You can either use the drop-down box, click on justification, and use left, right, or centered. Another way to do that is to just click somewhere in the equation, and back on the Home tab, you can click on the typical justification buttons, the left, center, right. You got the general idea. Now, given a table with text equations, that is equations that are not equation editor objects, as you see on your screen, those squares are actually superscripted 2's. You can actually highlight the entire table and hit Alt equals, and that will change every single cell into an equation editor object. And if you have a lot of those, it makes it very nice, very fast in order to change every cell into an equation editor object. So again, every cell is changed into an individual equation editor object. The blanks are preserved. So for example, if you had several leading or trailing blanks within those text equations, the blanks are actually preserved and stored within the equation editor object itself, which is very nice. And you may need to re-justify the equations. Let's talk about long division with tables and equation editor. Now, there's no facility to create long division with the equation editor, but you can fake it out using tables. And one way to do this is you can actually get very creative with the table borders. So for example, here's an equation of two polynomials. X cubed minus 3 is divided by x minus 2, and you wind up with all those other equations around it. If it isn't apparent, this is actually kind of a sneaky way of doing it. This is a table of 2 columns with 8 rows. Okay, I've just happened to justify some of the equations. For example, x minus 2 is right justified within its cell, and some of the other equations were initially left justified and blanks were put in. We're going to go through this in just a moment. Take note that each one of those equations is an equation editor object, including the 0. And the reason I'm including 0 as an equation editor object is because the font used, which is Cambria Math, is a lot nicer to work with rather than using Times Roman, and everything will be actually very uniform when you're using equation editor with Cambria Math. So it's very nice. So how do you do this? Well, you create and fill in the table first, and then you justify the equation. So you see on the left side of your screen, I've created a table of 2 columns and 8 rows. I've filled in all of the equations using equation editor, of course. Now, I've basically right justified that x minus 2, and I've left justified all the other equations. Okay, so what you want to do is bring up the Borders and Shadings dialog box, and the way you do that, as a reminder, is you right-click on the crosshair, you click Borders and Shading, and the Borders and Shading dialog box appears, and you click on None, and then click on OK, and all the borders will go away. Next, select the cell containing the dividend. In this case, it's x cubed minus 8, and you want to add a left and top border. So here we highlight x cubed minus 3. I basically, if I remember correctly, it's triple clicking rather than double clicking within a cell, or you can just use your mouse to highlight that particular cell. While you're in the cell, right click on that cell and click on Borders and Shading. And the Borders and Shading dialog box for the cell actually appears. And what you want to do is you want to click on the left wall and the ceiling. As you see on the diagram on the right hand side, the left wall has a vertical bar and the ceiling is the horizontal bar at the very top. Click on OK. And this is what you wind up with. So it's not too bad. Yes, you do have to kind of adjust a few things. You do have to add a few more borders. For example, you'll need to add the border under x cubed minus 2x squared. You'll need to add a border under 2x squared minus 4x. And you'll need to finally add a border under the second 4x minus 8. And then you would add blank spaces on the left side of each equation in order to justify it the way you want to. So you can also use, at the end of all this, you can actually use the table's autofit to contents option to adjust the table size automatically. So for example, if I highlight the entire table, that is if I right click on the crosshair, if I come down to autofit and I select autofit to contents, what you'll wind up getting is a very nice auto-fitted equation. That is, those long lines, those long horizontal lines kind of shrunk up a little bit. So that's a rather respectable looking long division. It's not perfect, but it'll work. So let's talk about matrices. Now you don't have to use tables in order to create matrices when you use Equation Editor. So again, you can use Equation Editor to create matrices. So as normal, you would hit the Alt equal sign and an Equation Editor object will appear. You click on the Matrix button and you can come down to any one of those matrices, but as you see highlighted, empty matrix with brackets or parens basically. So if you do that, if you click on that button, you'll wind up with a very nice 2x2 matrix like that. And then you can just click in every one of those dotted boxes and fill in the numbers that you want. But suppose you don't want 2x2, suppose you want 3x3 or some other size. So you can add additional rows and columns to a matrix once it's been created. So once you have a 2x2 matrix, you can click within any one of the dotted boxes, right click, and then select Insert Row Before, or Insert Row After, or Insert Column Before, or Insert Column After. And that will do exactly what it says, inserting the rows or columns before or after that particular cell. Now, you can click on any one of those dotted boxes in order to insert wherever you want to. So you have a choice as to where you want to insert stuff in. So for example, if I inserted a row, I have a blank row with 2 dotted boxes right below the row containing 1 and 2, which is very nice. Now, for those of you who are curious, yes, you can use shortcuts to actually create a matrix. You have to use the \matrix left paren, right paren shortcut. Each row is separated by an @ sign, and each column is separated by an ampersand. If necessary, you can surround the entire thing with parentheses. That is, if you want your matrix to be delimited by parens, or that is, be surrounded by parens, or brackets, what have you, you can actually do that. But at the end of all this, you're going to have to hit the space bar in order to resize the parens or the brackets or what have you. So for example, if you want to create the 2x2 matrix 1, 2, 3, 4, the way you do it is, since my matrix is surrounded by parentheses, I start off with a left paren, and that corresponds to the left paren to the left of the matrix. I then type in \matrix left paren, and then I start filling in the values. The first value at 1, 1 is the number 1. I follow with an ampersand. Then the value at 1, 2 is the number 2. Then to get to the next row, or to specify the next row, I would specify an @ sign. Then at 2, 1, I put the number 3. Then I put an ampersand, and that 2, 2 is the number 4. I would end the matrix shortcut by putting in a right paren, and then finally I would put in the right paren, which corresponds to the right paren surrounding the matrix. At this point, I would then hit the space bar in order to resize those parens. Now, let's create a 3x3 identity matrix surrounded by brackets. So for example, as you see, there's an identity matrix right there, 3x3. So I put in the left bracket, and again, that corresponds with the left bracket. I type in \matrix left paren, and then at 1, 1, I type the number 1, ampersand, 1, 2, the 0, ampersand, 1, 3, the 0. Then the @ sign gets me to row 2. Then I specify 0, 1, 0, again 0, ampersand 1, ampersand 0. Then to specify row 3, the @ sign, and then I specify 3.1 is 0, ampersand, 3.2 is 0, ampersand, and 3.3 finally is 1. End the matrix shortcut with the right paren, and then end the entire thing with your closing right bracket, and then hit the spacebar to resize the bracket. Now, to not frighten you, whenever you type in \matrix in the left paren, it'll be replaced with that black filled in box there. So don't be frightened all of a sudden. Oh my God, what is this box? Well, it's just basically the representative of the matrix, mathematically, and not the movie. So let's talk about alignment. And with alignment of equations, you don't really have to use tables. So you can align more than one equation to, say, an equal sign. You don't have to use tables to accomplish this. You create separate equation editor objects using Shift and the Enter key. You right-click each equal sign and select Align at this character as shown on the screen. I've double-clicked the equal sign there, right-clicked, Align at this character, and I would do the same thing for the remaining 2 equations and those equal signs as well. And ensure centered as a group is selected under justification as you see on the right side of your screen. And if you take a look, the equation y equals x plus x plus x plus 1, and then the equal sign 2x plus x plus 1, and those 2 equal signs are aligned, and then equals 3x plus 1, that's also aligned. So all 3 of those equal signs are aligned, which is very nice. So you don't really have to fake this out using tables. So it's very nice.